Shh, it's the Film Flamers.
Hi, I'm Chris.
Hey everybody, I'm Robert.
And we're the Film Flamers, bringing you our latest hot take. This month, we're covering The Grudge.
That's right, that's The Grudge 2020.
Yes. Produced by Sam Raimi, surprisingly, and of course directed by Nicolas Pesce.
Pesky? Is that,
I don't know.
I don't either. I mean, we'll say that for now. Hold on.
My edutainment fails me.
Yeah. We'll say, wait, what did you say first?
Pesce?
Pesce? Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. Who is the director of Eyes of My Mother and one of my favorite movies from 2019, Piercing. So
Yeah.
And he wrote this movie too, right? It was written and directed by?
Screenplay by, story by. Yeah, looks like it.
Okay. So, as you may have heard on our Shooting the Flames episode last week, we already knew sort of the abysmal reviews and ratings that this Grudge iteration was getting before we went to go see it. But we were fully committed, and we went to go see it anyway.
Yeah, and of course, like, I'm getting sent all of these things, like, you know, the Rotten Tomatoes, aggregate, which is 16%, and the audience rating is like 19%, which almost never happens, right? And then, of course, the consensus reads, dull and derivative, the rebooted Grudge wastes a talented cast and filmmaker on watered-down scares that may leave viewers nursing grievances of their own. And then, like, Matt sent me the cinema score, which has got a rare average grade of F, which I think is one of 20 films of all time that have ever gotten that score or something.
I mean, like, most recently, I think that the most famous movie to get an F on cinema score was Mother.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, because everyone was expecting that to be like this big, like, critical darling and audience favorite. And yet, it got a rare F on cinema score. So
that's strange because the reviews on Rotten Tomatoes and even the audience score is way higher than that.
So, yeah, it was that opening weekend for Mother. It was F all over the place for cinema scores.
Yeah,
so.
And you know what? I don't think Robert or I hated The Grudge. I don't think it was a horrible movie. No. But, I mean, this kind of thing makes me think a little bit about aggregates, right? If you see scores like this, when everyone sort of agrees or there's a consensus that a film just isn't good, they aren't saying it's atrocious necessarily. And I'd suspect many are just saying that it's just beige, boring, sitting there collapsing on itself like a flan in a cupboard, But if everyone agrees if everyone agrees in the world that this is just not a great film, then it's going to get that F. It's going to get horrible ratings on Rotten Tomatoes because that's just how aggregates work. Right? So I don't know. I didn't hate this movie. What about you?
No, I didn't hate it either. And I think it's safe to say from this point out, there will be spoilers. So, stay tuned at your own risk. Go see The Grudge 2020 and come back and listen to us. But we're going to be talking about it from here on out. So, no, I did not. I didn't hate this movie. I also didn't love it. I think beige is actually the best adjective to use for describing this particular film. And I am a huge fan of the Grudge series, both, the Japanese versions, Ju-on and all its, sequels, and the American sequels. I like those quite a bit. And so I think I had high expectations for this movie.
No, and I think you're justified in that because, I mean, you look at the director and he did Piercing. You look at the guy who did the music, or actually the guys, I guess, the Newton Brothers, right?
Brothers, yeah.
They just came off of Dr. Sleep, which was a great soundtrack, right? And then you've got this cast with like, Andrea Riseborough and like John Cho and Lynn Shaye,
For sure.
Who's like horror royalty. And, of course, her brother started New Line Cinema, essentially founded it, and, you got all this talent, you got Sam Raimi producing it. And yet it's like no one's best work. It's just like everyone just came to do a job and left. It's so strange.
I think we also have to bring up the fact that this movie was supposed to come out in January of 2019. So it's pushed back a full year. And, we're almost never privy to the reasons why that they would push something back, Maybe they thought they needed to do some reshoots or reworking of it, but nevertheless, it took a full year after this movie's completion to be released into the movie theater.
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, they could have pushed it back another year and maybe like changed a couple things, I guess. But
well, honestly, like I look at this film and I think it would have worked. And I know I keep saying this from time to time, but it almost just seems like it would have worked so much better as, you know, a mini series, kind of like The Haunting of Hill House or something, where you've got this like episodic, okay, here's this family that lived in the house and what happened to them. And this next episode, you know, here's this family and what happened to them. And you can kind of go back and forth. The Haunting of Hill House did that so well in episodic format. And I feel like this one suffers being kind of pushed into this, you know, tighter, you know, 94-minute movie when it had so much to tell with all of these. It was just almost too packed with all of the different families and what had happened with them and how it came over from Japan, you know, and it was just like back and forth in almost a Pulp Fiction-y kind of way.
Yeah.
And I kind of got lost in who was first, you know, what was happening, you know, why it matters. And the rules were also seemed to be different than the original Grudge. And it seemed to be more house-based instead of person-based. And I don't know, I enjoyed our journey with like the American version back in like 2004 or whatever with Sarah Michelle Gellar. You know, she sleuthed right on through that and ended up trying to burn the house down too and was wrong, which is the whole, you know, twist at the end, I guess.
Yeah.
But, you know, like this movie was all over the place. It just didn't have the great narrative flow or pacing. It was kind of boring. It was really over-reliant on jump scares. Some of those are really, really good jump scares, but like I didn't have this feeling of dread, which I think it could have had if it had more solid like narrative flow.
And I completely agree with you. I think one of the things I like most about at least the American remake of The Grudge, the first one, was that, I mean, it took a character and it told their story for that particular point in the movie. Yes, there was the overarching, you know, plot with Sarah Michelle Gellar's character, Karen, I think her name was. But like whenever it broke away from her, it told a complete story, right? Like her sister-in-law and, you know, the family who lived in the house that she was going to work in as a social worker and things like that, you know, but this movie sort of broke up those narrative flows way too much. Like I would rather have seen John Cho and his wife's story told to fruition and then move on to the next one. I think it would have been better for me, right?
Yeah.
And you're right. This would have worked a lot better as a series, I think, if you're going to do that kind of procedural aspect to it. Because really, this movie relied very heavily on like the cop aspect, you know, there's some parts in like the other Grudges that deal with the police and whatnot. But they're just not explored as much. If you're going to do this kind of exploration with that, like crime procedural, you need to take your time and do it well. I don't think that I got enough time to get to know these characters enough to care about the outcomes of their lives after they step foot in that house, right?
Yeah, and like I said, you know, it could have had this creeping dread for each of those stories, but it's like, no, we're going to stop this and bring you to the present. And as soon as that builds, it just cuts to another scene, you know, or a flashback. And it's just, and that's why it seems like, you know, the jump scares are so, you know, the focus of, you know, how it's trying to present as a horror movie rather than,
it's like, you know, completely manufactured jump scares too. I mean, like there was one effective one for me, the only one that I jumped at. And did you jump at any of these jump scares at all?
I think the one where they're in the car and there was someone like...
Oh, beating on the window or whatever?
Window. Yeah.
Yeah, so I jumped, spoiler alert, whenever she had gotten home after burning the house down or whatever, and she was calling her kid over and the kid was walking up to her and it ran at her and it turned out to be the little girl. And then her son was still in bed or whatnot. It was
that was in the trailer and I remembered that. Yeah.
Oh, really? See, yep. And then after I jumped at that, I was just like, this was in another trailer too. There was a very similar scare in the Prodigy trailer. And I was like, that also made me jump. So,
well, and you know, that's kind of a new, like, I love how they keep like adding on to like the change jump scare thing, like someone running at you thing. And I think the first one of those happened, I want to say, in an Annabelle movie.
Oh, yeah. Probably Creation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean it's effective. I mean, the jump scares were good. And this movie tried its best to to build on some sort of dread. It just never really came to fruition. So I don't know. How do you feel about the acting in this movie?
I didn't have a problem with the acting at all. I thought they all did, their best. You got some heavy hitters here. Andrea Riseborough is someone that I don't recognize, even though she's been in a whole bunch of stuff that I've seen, and a bunch of kind of horror-ish. She was in like Birdman. She was in Oblivion. She's been in a lot of other movies, and Mandy, but I don't remember her. But
I don't remember Mandy either.
Yeah, she's like the short-haired police officer in this. And actually, now that I mentioned that, there was another reviewer that actually kind of compared this to Fallen in a way that they were trying to kind of ground this with almost like a police procedural type of situation, and they just didn't succeed at it at all because everything just got such a short time in the spotlight that you're not sure where you're supposed to have focus in the narrative.
I mean, really, it could have been a 2.5 hour movie and that would have made it a little better. Although I'm not quite sure if they didn't like amp up things, then, I would have enjoyed it anymore if it were longer. I do think that the John Cho, Betty Gilpin storyline was my favorite, right? The couple that was having, pregnancy problems. I mean, I really liked them. I like her as an actress. Betty Gilpin's great. But really, my favorite person in this movie was Jacki Weaver, right? And I always forget how much I love her until I see her in whatever movie she's in at that particular point. I mean, she was nominated for a Best Supporting Actress, for God's sake, many years ago. But so she played that assisted suicide woman.
She was so
who was
good
coming to help them.
Silver Linings Playbook as the mother. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And so, I mean, I don't know why, but I really enjoyed her character and I enjoyed her performance in this movie so much.
Okay, at the beginning with John Cho, there was a woman across the street in giant hair curlers, and she was like the same stature and body type as Jacki Weaver. And I was like, was that Jacki Weaver's character? Like, and I'm like, why would you choose an actress of the same stature? Like, it doesn't make sense that she's the neighbor in that Backlash. Like, it doesn't make sense.
Just one of many mistakes.
And the rules just seemed so out there. I hate to go back to the narrative issues since we're talking about the cast, but it's like John Cho, right? Like, he didn't really see much, but he essentially just got possessed and went back and killed his wife in their home, I guess. And
that's not the way it works, right?
I mean, it's so different. Like, some of them get haunted and they see things, then they can go and they're just kind of relentlessly haunted, versus some other people get, left alone, like the guy, the husband taking care of his dying wife, Lin Shaye. And, it presented itself differently almost every time, and it wasn't consistent. And I never remember having that problem in the original Grudge.
Well, no. And so I took my nephew to see this movie, and he has seen all the other Grudge movies, at least the American ones, because I showed them to him and he liked them very much. And so this is the perfect person to go see this movie with. And we were leaving the theater and we were driving home, and he was like, it's not the same. What happened to like all the tendrils of hair coming out of the attic and like enveloping people, and like how come the ghost didn't kill people more often? And I was just like, well, I don't know. I mean, just like artistic choice, I guess.
Yeah.
But, also, I have a problem with the marketing of this movie. They really hyped up the fact that this was rated R.
Yeah.
And the other Grudges were not. And so, I mean, all the trailers, all the promotional spots on social media really hyped up a violent gore factor, right? And I was sort of expecting that going into this movie. And this movie seemed almost a lot more tame than the original reboots or remakes of The Grudge. Like, there were some scenes in that original Grudge where I was just like floored, like when that woman had her whole mouth like ripped off. Do you remember that from that original Grudge? That social worker walking through the school and she turns and like she's missing her lower jaw and it's just her tongue like wagging. Oh my God. Shit.
And I loved all that stuff in the original Grudge where like, nowhere is safe. It imprints on people, not on places, right? And so it can go anywhere, any time of day. It doesn't care. And that's what I loved. It was so relentless and inescapable. And that was part of that creeping dread. And any security officer could see it on the camera and then it would go for them. Like, it was just so like prolific, versus in this, it just seems so almost inconsistent and playful in a way. Like, and then if you talk about the gore, like Lin Shaye eventually, spoiler alert, Lin Shaye basically ends up killing herself. And, you know, it's like it's an opportunity just to have that kind of somber moment, but her body literally explodes when it's like, I'm like, we're not water balloons. Like, your head might do that, but not your whole body. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, she falls down like 3 or 4 flights of stairs, and her body's just like spilling all the blood that was contained inside. I was like, no, I don't think that's how it happens.
I literally laughed out loud. I was like, this movie has successfully made me laugh at Lynn Shaye's death, and I'm like, this is the wrong thing. Like, reaction that I'm having.
I don't know. I mean, as problematic as it is, I mean, it's not the worst movie I've ever seen in my life. I have seen worse horror movies. And I mean, as far as like January goes, it's not the biggest time for horror films traditionally. I think that, you know, last year we had Escape Room come out like really early in January, and it made a shit ton of money. And I mean, it's not the best movie, you know, it's certainly better than this one, I would say. But, I mean, I think that people are now flooding the early year market with horror movies because we have no less than like 3 or 4 major horror releases coming out in January. And I think, you know, in previous years, we were lucky to get maybe one, if any at all. And so if they're going to do that, you know, then you really need to check your quality first, I think.
Yeah, you know, I don't blame the studio. I mean, as far as, of course, they're the ones that said, we want another Grudge. Let's kick this off again. Let's do it. Horror's like a comeback. Like, let's bring all these important people together and just like make it. And so all the ingredients were there. And then, you know, it couldn't, you know, he couldn't pull it off for whatever reason. Like, it's not his style of movie to make or something. And I don't know, like, I don't know what went wrong, but maybe it's an editing thing. Maybe it's really just based on the story. It should have been, like I said, a mini series of some kind. Although, back to Jacki Weaver, I did have one little thought. I was like, man, if they like really like remade Poltergeist shot for shot, I would love her as Tangina.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I completely agree with you. That didn't occur to me while I was watching it. I'm so glad you said it now because I can totally envision that. It's just something about her, like her voice, right? When she's doing her American accent. And I mean, I don't know. Just the look of her, the sound of her. Yeah. I was completely enthralled with her character.
She almost seemed a little Muppety, and, you know.
Yes.
And she like... Not that that's an insult at all. Like, adorable in a way, like an endearing, you know, but she almost played it like she was a psychic. Yes. You know, like the way she was like walking through, and after she saw that, and she's like, okay, I understand, you know. One of the biggest laughs of the entire movie was when he was like, you know, I'm here because this house, you know, there's a way for people to survive death. And I think that there's hope for her. And that's why I'm here. And he's like, and she's like, and she looked like she was being empathetic. And he's like, now you understand. So help me, you know, have a peaceful end to her life. Cause she's there that's what she is. She's basically a Kevorkian, right? Mm-hmm. And so it just hard cuts to her packing her bags and leaving the house. Yeah. I'm like, hell yeah. But of course it's the Grudge, so she's still not safe. And she ends up being, you know, crispy critter.
Yeah. She sort of bookends the movie a little bit too, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, as bad as the reviews were, I think that, I mean, it made a decent amount of money this weekend. It made like, almost $11.5 million. It opened at number 5 for the box office. But I mean, like, Star Wars had just come out recently, and there's no stopping that movie currently. It was never going to be number 1. But I think $11 million is pretty decent. I don't know what the budget was for this movie. They're probably not.
The budget's $10 million, and now it's made $18 million.
Okay, so I mean, I think as long as it grosses maybe like $30 million worldwide, they'll make their money back. So it's not a huge loss just yet. But and hopefully people. I'm a big proponent of go decide for yourself whether or not a movie is good. You know, you don't have to run out and see it in the theater, but don't let a whole slew of negative reviews, you know, keep you from streaming this later on when it's released on Amazon or something, you know. Always go and watch a movie and decide for yourself whether or not you like it.
Well, I want them to learn from this because originally there's a plan that they talked about back in September. And Nicolas Pesce expressed interest in a crossover film between The Grudge and The Ring.
Well, they already have one of those. I mean, it's a Japanese movie, you know. I mean, it's available to watch in its original format, you know. But I don't think that American audiences are that invested in either one of these franchises enough to go see like Kayaku versus Sudoku, whatever, you know. I mean, it's like it's not going to happen, really. And I mean, honestly, I think that with the reviews this movie has gotten, whether or not it makes some money, I think this kind of like puts a nail in the coffin of The Grudge as far as American audiences go. Yeah. So, and hopefully. I mean, and that's kind of, well, I don't know. I'm kind of sad by that because I mean, I like the franchise. I just think this one happens to be not the best entry into it.
Well, you know what? They're going to try again in another 10 years, you know?
Probably.
So
yeah, everything's
fun.
cyclical.
And
right?
Meanwhile, I can go back to the original Japanese film and I can go back to the original American film. You know, both of which
directed
are
by the same man.
Way better.
So yeah, maybe that's why. Maybe that's why the first American like version was so good, because it's helmed by the man who made all the Japanese ones.
Yeah,
right.
And I actually like the American version better, just because it adds this whole new dimension of like he could have easily made it an American film, like over in America, done it for shot or whatever, but he had it as an American kind of fish out of water in Japan, you know, yep. and actually did that for the home before them, or the occupants before that. And so it had this whole other element of, you know, being trapped in open spaces, not being able to speak the language, not being able to know, you know, how to basically survive on the economy there. And it was super interesting that on top of everything else, she was just so alone, versus I don't think any other Grudge movie has really kind of re-encapsulated that. And
I agree. I mean, I was thinking about it. I mean, like after we watched this movie, I was laying in bed and I was thinking about the original American Grudge, and I was like, I need to go back and watch that. But I was thinking about like Clea Duvall's character in that movie, you know, and how lost she was when she had to open up that package of ramen to smell it, to know what the flavor was and things like that. It's just like minor details like that make a movie so good.
Visual
and
storytelling.
even The Grudge 2. Yeah, I mean, The Grudge 2 was a good sequel to me. It continued on a storyline and gave us two characters and even brought some things to America, you know? I mean, it was a good movie, a much better movie than this. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. At the end of the day, what do you rate Grudge 2020?
I gave it 2 stars.
Out of 5?
Yep.
I just looked it up on Letterboxd, and after I left the theater, I actually gave it 2.5 stars out of 5. So, I mean, I don't know why I gave it that extra half.
Yeah, it's not horrible like a 1 star would be. It's just not good. It's just flat out not good.
It's just, I mean, it's just a middle of the road kind of like movie. I didn't have a good time. I didn't have a bad time. It was just there. You know, I spent an hour and a half eating popcorn.
Hence your extra 0.5 stars. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. So,
I had a slight bad taste in my mouth, which is why I didn't give it that extra 0.5 for a meh rating. It was a little worse than meh to me.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know, because I'm still thinking about it now. And I guess that if I'm still thinking about a movie several days after I watch it, I will give it, you know, a little extra bump or something. But
yeah, I'm still thinking about it too, but I'm just thinking about all the things that made me laugh.
So it works better for you as a comedy. Yeah. I don't know. I really think that you and I are just like fans of movies in general. And like, there's really, I mean, I don't think I've ever given a movie a 1 star review.
Oh my god, now I have to check. Have I?
Oh shit.
Filter, sort by.
Well, it should be like my favorite fucking movie. You're like Magnolia, 1 star.
Lowest first. Last Jedi at 2 stars.
Oh, okay.
Life Aquatic.
Okay, I'm there with you on that.
Anna and the Apocalypse, Ghost Ship, The Grudge. Those are my lowest rated movies. I have 5. I don't have a 1 star. I have 5 2 stars, and The Grudge is on those. I'm actually going to go and rate up Star Wars Last Jedi. I saw it again, and I'm less mad at it now.
Oh, really? I need to watch that.
Yeah. So I'm lifting it up to 3.
But I forgot what happened in the one that came before The Last Jedi, so I have to start all over again.
Oh, God. I gave The Shape of Water 2.5.
That's not a good movie. It's not.
Tree of Life. Hurt Locker.
Wah, wah. You know what? I might give. Well, I haven't seen all of Tree of Life, so I can't rate that
Lovely
movie.
Bones.
I've only seen the first like 40 minutes. I like The Lovely Bones.
The Endless.
Anyway,
Mortal Kombat.
Way off topic. You didn't like Endless?
No. I mean, I gave it 2.5, so it's meh.
Anywho, I guess let's bring this in. Well, guys, I think that sort of wraps up our hot take on The Grudge 2020. As always, we are curious to know what you think about this movie. I know a lot of people on Twitter went to go see it and they were expressing their disdain, but you want to know what you, our listeners, think of it. You know, if you're going to go see it now or wait, whatever. Reach out to us on social media at The Film Flamers on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
And you can email us, of course, at tiredqueens@filmflamers.com or call our hotline at 972-666-7733, and we'll play your voicemail on the air and respond to it.
That's right. On the Shooting the Flames episode. We love the voicemails. Keep them coming. And if you're listening to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, just go ahead and hit that review button. Leave us a 5-star review if you'd like, and a little snippet of what you think of our podcast, and we'll also read that on our Shooting the Flames episode. It's been a while since we've had a review, and we're kind of desperate to get one.
Yeah, please. We're so lonely.
So lonely. So cold.
You can't say anything. I'm up here in Boston. It's snowing tonight. We're having an ice apocalypse tomorrow.
It was 67 degrees today when I got home, so...
Yeah.
Guys, we have a lot more content for you coming out in January. Stay tuned for that. We're covering Karin Kusama's The Invitation, our deep dive this month, and we're going to have a very special year-end review for 2019, talking about all of our favorites, maybe some of our not-so-favorite movies of the year, and
maybe even talk about some of the films that we're looking forward to in 2020.
That's right. So, I guess until next time, everybody. I was going to do I'm not even quite sure I can.
I forgot to do it.
Sweet
dreams.
I mean, like, really, the first Grudge, like, scared the shit out of me when
scared
I watched
everyone. It was good.
My fucking God. This one, not so much. Actually, I was scared to ask for my money back, but I was going to.
And yet 2.5 stars? You just feel bad for it.
No, I would never.
I'm kind of shocked that I haven't rated anything 1 star. I'm like, I need to go be like a little harsher. I feel bad. I'm like, there's so many people that worked on these films. Like, I don't want to like rate anything 1 star, you know?
Well, I've never rated anything 1 star because my worst movie-going experience is still a good time to me. Like, I just like watching movies. I mean, if they're bad, I'll just never watch it again, you know? I mean, and I'm sure I'll watch this movie again when it comes out. I'll give it a second shot.
Yeah.
I'm probably not going to like it, though. Are we still recording?
Yes.
Oh.